Joining us now on the Newsline is a return guest to the program. Pleased to welcome the President and CEO of NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Association. He is Troy Miller. Mr. Miller, good morning, and thank you for the time.
Well, good morning to you as well, and thanks for having me on again.
NRB.org is where you can go to learn more. As folks are finding that on the interwebs, Mr. Miller, tell us, NRB, National Religious Broadcasters, who are you folks and what do you do?
Yeah, so NRB is the largest association representing Christian communicators in our country. We have over 1,700 members. We advocate for free speech, freedom of religion, and a number of other issues to make the most friendly regulatory and legal environment that there is for Christian communicators across the country and around the world.
And these days, you've got a much broader base from which to draw membership, because in the old days, not even that long ago, relatively speaking, there were folks who had government licenses and microphones, and that's pretty much it. But I'm guessing that the reach is so much broader now thanks to the availability of podcasts and similar dissemination methods.
Well, it is. As you said, we started off as an organization mainly representing radio, but over the years, radio and television program producers, the Christian film publishers, and now all things digital, including, podcasters, short form video makers on Instagram and YouTube and all of these other platforms. Look, everybody today practically has at your fingertips the ability to be a communicator and a pretty large communicator. There was a recent study out that said the average social media person reaches about 480 people in their circle of influence. So today, everybody's a communicator, and we're out there trying to protect the rights for them to do whatever it is God's called their ministry to do.
Do you find, and this one is just like putting it on a tee for you, Mr. Miller, but I'll do it anyway. Do you find a more receptive audience in the White House these days as opposed to the last 4 years?
Well, that's a pretty easy tee it up. Absolutely. We have a much more receptive audience in the executive branch, almost every part of the executive branch, including the areas that we deal with, mainly in the federal communications area, the Federal Trade Commission, just a number of areas, not only just friendly, but just a great group of godly people and people who are living out their own personal faith.
Now, you hear a lot of people talk about separation of church and state, and I dare say most of those who say that have no idea what the Constitution actually says on the topic, in particular the First Amendment. But even if they have read it, they are either misinterpreting it innocently or, shall we say, maliciously. And you just talked about these good people of professed faith in the White House. There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that whole term, separation of church and state, came from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, as many of you know, to the Danbury Baptist. And the idea was, it really got mislabeled by the leftists who wanted to use this, the progressives, as separation of church and state. But the essence of that letter and the essence of what's in the Constitution and other documents in our government is the separation of state and church. The state is to stay out of all things religious, including an individual's religious conscience. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with anybody holding any federal, state, or local office across this country and continuing to live out their Christian worldview. Matter of fact, that's what most of our founding fathers called for, was people that would govern and oversee us, and they would do it in such a way that their Judeo-Christian values and morals played through in the kinds of decisions that they made.
Troy Miller is President and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters Association, NRB.org for more. He joins us live on the Newsline on News Talk 1540 KXEL. We've passed the supposedly magic 100-day mark of the current president's second administration. There have been a number of things that, frankly, I dare say if you had looked at the list and said, that's a pretty good 4 years, but it was done in 100 days with regard to topics that you and your members care about. Identify a few of these of great importance to you, please.
Yeah, you're right. This administration has been definitely had the pedal to the floor and flying. They've done more in 100 days than most have done in their entire time in the office. And look, two things I think that the president, when he spoke at the NRB convention in 2024, and he laid out his vision and specifically how government and religion should relate and in the times cooperate together. A number of things he said he would address. First, he addressed right off the bat for the pro-lifers who were put into prison, who were persecuted by the previous administration for simply praying. He pardoned those folks. He got them out. That was one of our top issues because that's just down to earth. He's affecting people's lives. Second, he put in, as you know, the team, the task force together to look at the weaponization of government against, and specifically against Christianity and then broader against religions out there. And that task force has been put together. Attorney General Pam Bondi is leading that. They just held their first meeting. Our General Counsel Mike Ferris was one of the people that testified at that meeting about what's going on. So we are really excited. We've seen already seen the de-weaponization of the government in place. We want to see it go deeper into the sort of deep state administrative state there, but he's held those two things up. And the third thing he's done in his appointments, especially at the Federal Communications Commission with Chairman Carr there, they've stepped up not only deregulating a lot that goes on that affects us broadcasters out there, but also reversing some of the DEI and other intrusive measures that were underway. So we're very pleased with this administration in their first 100 days.
And in fact, many of those latter provisions, those trample your First Amendment rights with regard to practicing faith and operating a business in the way your faith tells you to operate your business.
Yeah, exactly. And look, that was one of the key things that we've been fighting is that, a lot of what the government would want to do, which is prohibited by the First Amendment. And this is to the heart of what Jefferson was getting at, because he didn't want the government to declare any kind of national denomination. And the issue was that the freedom of conscience, the freedom of an individual person, not even just a church or a denomination, but the freedom of that individual person to live out their faith as their conscience dictates, not as the government dictates, but as their conscience dictates. That's one of the things we're hoping. We've seen some of the executive orders that have already brought that sanity back, and we're hoping that Capitol Hill up here will put some of those executive orders into permanent legislation so that we don't see those kinds of intrusions by these regulatory agencies again.
We're speaking with Troy Miller, President CEO of NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Association, nrb.org, for all manner of information. One of the things that has been done over the past, and I'm going to get, it's probably been 20 years now, just shows you how quickly time flies, but the Federal Communications Commission set up areas on the band, particularly the FM band, for low-power FM stations, a whole different category, and they were just designed to serve a limited geographic area. Those have been tremendous vehicles, or they certainly were at the time, for churches or groups of religious-minded individuals to have their own space on the band. Are those still as popular in an age of podcasts and streaming and everything as they were at the time? Because I know you just go up and down the dial, and I've done a lot of driving across the state in the past month for speaking engagements, and I'll just go up and down the dial, and I come upon all manner of these low-power stations hyper-serving their faith-based communities.
Hyper-serving their local faith-based communities, which is a big push for us. And yeah, they are still very popular. As a matter of fact, here in a few weeks, you can go to nrb.org we'll be releasing a study that we did with the Barna Group, and you'll see how how much traditional radio in particular is one of the top mediums that are listened to. And as a matter of fact, radio is across the board is listened to even than most digital platforms today. And so these are very popular. They're a low-cost means for local communities, local churches to get in and reach their communities. And look, we're looking at where the FCC is going with some of these ownership rules and also with some of the way the spectrum is going to be distributed down the road here. And that is one of the things that we want to protect.
NRB.org if you'd like more information, and if on any of these topics you're thinking, well, we should do that at my church. I have a feeling the folks at NRB are very happy to provide guidance and counsel and help folks out. We should also note, today is May 8th. As we've said on this program multiple times, it is the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. You yourself wore the uniform at a different era. Thank you for that. And NRB is paying close attention to the needs of veterans during Military Appreciation Month. This is more than just simply a hearty handshake and thanks for a job well done. You folks are digging deep into the things that are really needed.
That's right. And if most people don't know, we have, fortunately, a crisis amongst our veterans today. Veterans as a demographic group have one of the highest, if not the highest, suicide rates. They also have one of the highest rates of addictions and divorce and depression. And so as veterans have, protected this country, we're going to, at the end of the month, we'll be celebrating and remembering Memorial Day. And as you said, today was Victory Day across Europe. And as we know, freedom comes with a price. It is not